Hi folks, Boogs here. Thanks for your interest in the Bradley video. It was nice to see some discussion in the comments. Remember that every like, view and comment brings us the support we need to grow our channel and our community. As I mentioned last week, the poll was live for today's vehicle. It was a decisive win for the T62, and so today this is the vehicle that we will be discussing. Now, the T62 is the successor of the T55. And in the late 1950s, it became apparent that the T55's 100mm main gun was inadequate when compared to newer Western tanks. For instance, it was incapable of penetrating the frontal armour of the Centurion and the Mark 48 Patton with AP shells. This was possible, though, with the 100mm heat. However, this round was much less accurate and had a much lower muzzle velocity. With this, it was suggested to mount the T55 with a 115mm smoothbore gun, capable of firing armour-piercing, fin-stabilised discarding sabot. Tests showed that the T55 was unsuited for this though, as a larger turret and hull were needed. This is where the design for the T62 was bred. Now, as a complete package, the base spec T62 is very similar to the T55. However, as mentioned, it has a slightly larger hull, turret and different road wheels. The T62 is armed with the planned 115mm U5 TS smoothbore main gun with a 2-axis stabilizer. This is complemented by a secondary 7.62mm PKT coaxial machine gun. The T62 had an optional 12.7mm Dishka mounted to the loader's hatch. However, after 1972, all tanks were built with these mounted. With a 12-cylinder 38-litre V55 engine, the T62 had a power of 581 horsepower at 2000 RPM. But because of its larger gun and size, the extra weight meant it was slightly less manoeuvrable when compared to the preceding T55. All this meant that the T62 could reach a maximum road speed of 50 km per hour and had an operational range of 450 km without the addition of extra fuel drums. Armour increases compared to the T55 were marginal in places, with the front hull armour being only 5% thicker. But since the hull and turret size were increased, 15% thicker armour could be added to the front of the turret. Even though there were thickness gains over the T55, the lower side and lower roof armour of the T62 is actually thinner than the T55. While the commander's sight remained the same as the one used on the T55, the gunner got an upgraded TSH-2B41 sight. This provided them with a choice of ×4 or ×7 magnification. Some limitations of the T62 design though were in its internal size. It was very cramped indeed. With this limited space came an increased risk to the crew if the ammo rack or fuel tank were hit. Additionally, the ejection port for spent casings, being a simple hatch that would open at the rear of the turret, would expose the crew under nuclear, biological and chemical conditions. The in-game T62 we play in squad has two noticeable variants. The pre-1972 variant that you will play as insurgents and irregular militia, and the 1972 version that can be played on some MEA layers. I'll explain these differences shortly. Like with all MBTs, the driver has a health pool of 3000 HP, and as always, they're in charge of reporting damage to the systems and total remaining HP. The view from the T62 is limited, with only 2 windows, but this is not as limited as the T72 or Challenger that only have 1. The driver in the T62 is also located on the left side of the tank, with a second window facing right to give the driver a little more visibility of the right tracks. In terms of manoeuvrability, then the T62 performs very poorly. While small and sometimes nimble, at low speeds it is difficult to manoeuvre. Using a very rudimentary brake to steer system, the T62 cannot turn while under heavy braking. To turn while slowing, the driver must intermittently release the S key. This does happen in other tanks, however not as bad as the T62. The driver can also bring the tank up to a speed of 50 km an hour on the road, in-game. However, as is with the case quoted vehicle speeds, it may be possible to get slightly higher on such roads such as the one as in the far south of Al-Basra. Now, the armour on the T62 is pitiful. The only place that stands any chance of bouncing incoming HATs or AP rounds are the front turret armour. With this being the case, you must be in a hold down position to give you any chances of winning a 1v1 against any other tank. As mentioned with other tanks, hold down is always your friend, but if you catch yourself with your hull exposed, then you're having a very tough day ahead of you. If you expose your hull in any way, then you risk exposing the huge ammo rack located at the front of the vehicle. This can be seen in the hitbox screen shown. The T62 also has a second ammo rack located slightly more central than the front one, but further back in the tank, under the rear of the turret. This makes the T62 incredibly vulnerable, and so is best suited to play on large open maps where you can easily hide your hull. The gunner in the T62 has a very slow firing 115mm smoothbore gun, as per the design stated in the history section. This gun can shoot 12 armor piercing, 8 heat, and 20 fragmentation rounds. In addition to this, the gunner has a 7.62mm coaxial machine gun with 2,000 rounds of ammo. Now, not only does the T62 have some terrible armor, but it has the slowest reload for an MBT in the game, 9 seconds. That means that in the time it takes you to fire 2 rounds, the Abrams can get off 3. Further adding to the downsides, the T62's turret takes a whopping 18 seconds to rotate a full 360 degrees. Fortunately though, the gunner does have a stabilizer. However, with this poor turret rotation speed, the gunner sometimes cannot turn the turret faster than the driver can turn the hull. This makes firing on the move very difficult. The commander in the T62 has no weapon to fire. He does however have a periscope with 2 levels of zoom to aid with targeting and ranging. What the commander does lack though is a stabilizer. This makes on-the-move target acquisition extremely difficult. This means that the commander should avoid using the highest zoom possible while moving and focus on looking for enemy infantry on or beside the road. Also, with the lack of a stabilized commander periscope, the tank does not possess the hunter-killer functionality that would allow the gunner to snap onto targets. As mentioned previously, there are 2 versions of the T62 in-game. The first is the pre-1972 version, which is placed when on the irregular militia and insurgent factions. This version is the same in all regards, except that it has a shielded open-top loader's Dishka machine gun. As with most open-top loaders, this gun is often useless as the operator is extremely vulnerable. With this version, the loader has 6 100-round ammo boxes to use. However, in the 1972 version of the T62 that is played on the MEA faction, the loader's gun is an NSVT Dishka that is the same as the one on the T72. This makes it much more effective, as now no crew member is exposed, just like the Challenger or the T72. However, like the commander's periscope, this gun is not stabilized. This version has 2 150-round boxes, and not being stabilized, it makes it very difficult to aim and shoot while on the move. All versions of the T62 allow up to 4 infantry to sit on the tank for transport. However, all of these men are exposed to enemy fire. This functionality is rarely used, and I am yet to see any infantry being carried. However, this does provide the tank to play a more supportive role. This is accompanied by its ability to carry 300 ammo resource points. Altogether, this provides the tank with the ability to carry a sapper and a hat or lat kits to support the tank in anti-infantry and anti-vehicle roles. It can then supply the infantry with these ammo points. Additionally, it can also use these resources to support a nearby hab. So altogether then, we can summarise that the T62 is definitely one of, if not the weakest NBT in the game. That is, it is extremely vulnerable to tank fire and heavy anti-tanks. It also lacks the firepower to comfortably engage enemy tanks at range. However, with that being said though, a skilled crew can use the environment to their advantage and still pose a very valid threat to enemy tanks that underestimate the T62's capabilities. Further to this, the T62 can provide necessary to supporting infantry with its ammo resources and transport capability. It is wise not to seek out engagements, 1v1 engagements, with enemy tanks in the T62, but rather position yourself so that when you are pushed by an enemy tank, you have the upper hand. Always remember, fire first if you can, because with that slow reload, if you don't get a round off, they're going to be able to put you down quick. And that's it. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like the video and leave a comment with what you thought. Do think about subscribing to be able to keep up to date with all our uploads. To vote for the next Armour brief and also to be notified when we're playing, then the link to join our Discord is in the description. Come say hi, come join our games, and come submit your clips for our community highlights series. Cheers folks, Boogs out.